Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dream Leapers with Harriet Cole. I'm so happy to be with you today. You know, when I get a really good guest, I get excited, and today is definitely one of those days. Our guest today I met in my first iteration. So I say I've had 39 lives. My first professional life was at Essence Magazine, and I met him when he was starring in a show that I'll tell you about in just a moment. Many of you will remember that, and he's gone on to have an incredible career. I want to tell you about him because I know many of you will know him from different points. So listen, Eriq La Salle, that's who we're talking about. He is best known to worldwide television audiences for his award-winning portrayal of the commanding Dr. Peter Benton on the NBC critically acclaimed and history-making medical drama ER. ER started it all, y'all. You may not, some of you remember, I know you do. Educated at Juilliard and NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, his credits range from Broadway to film roles opposite Eddie Murphy in Coming to America, remember that? Robin Williams in 1 Hour Photo, and Hugh Jackman in Logan. La Salle has maintained a prolific acting career while at the same time working steadily as a director, taking the helm for HBO, Showtime, NBC, Fox, and CBS. He remains a valued member of the Dick Wolf Entertainment Camp, you know, that historic group that has made everything. After 4 years as executive producer and director on one of my favorite shows, Chicago PD, in addition to directing episodes of Law & Order and Law & Order Organized Crime. Yes, you know his work. As a writer, and that's why he's here today, La Salle is the author of several critically acclaimed thrillers published in 2022 and 2023. Laws of Depravity, Laws of Wrath, and Laws of Annihilation. And that's the one that's just coming out right now. He's also written an episode of The Twilight Zone, which made WGA's list of 101 best written TV series. Please join me in welcoming Eriq La Salle.
Hi, how are you? It's great to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. Congratulations on
big smile. I was just listening to you. I was like, oh, okay. Just going. The big goofy smile. So anyway,
we like that big goofy smile. Hey, look. So I'm a writer, Eriq. I have written 7 books, no novels, but nonfiction. I appreciate good writing. You are a good writer. Yeah, I mean like you just. I was reading Laws of Annihilation in the nail salon, you know, and now what people do is you're watching something on TV. I was like, no, I have to read this book. And, you know, trying to figure out how to turn the page and have my hand in the UV thing. I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to keep turning. This is so good. You are excellent at taking us into a scenario with the characters. I mean, the detail is incredible. I'm wondering, because you've done so much work in television and film where detail is really important in order to illustrate a story, where did that detail in storytelling come from for you?
Well, I think, you know, something that you said about, you know, you have 39
lives.
And what you realize over the course of your career, you know, for those that are blessed to have a long career, as long as you're in the game, you're constantly learning. You don't unlearn. So right. Even if you're no longer doing a specific thing, you still use the knowledge from that experience. So there are things from your Essence days to after that still has helped to shape you to be who you are right now as an artist. And so obviously film and television is a huge influence on me. There is the fast pace in which I write, because I write for people. Toni Morrison once said, I wrote my first book because I wanted to read it.
Ah,
And I think and so I write for me and I write for people like me, meaning I have a short attention span. So my chapters are like first of all, I jump in right away. I start sprinting right away. And with the short chapters, 4 to 5 pages on average, it allows me to keep the pace going. There's the cinematic quality of the storytelling because of my influence of television. These novels are the end game is to turn them into a streaming show or a movie series. So they're
and that
written.
is so clear, Eriq. When you read it, I've read a few scripts, and when you read it, you can see, okay, the directions for what you're going to do in the scene. You kind of read it in the book. I want to tell you, look, y'all, this book, Laws of Annihilation, is 412 pages. And sometimes you could look at a book this big and go, oh my God, I can't read that. Except for you can, to your point, because you kind of riveted for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then you can take a pause. Like you can turn a page, you can go do something else and come back to it, except you don't want to. You just because you have us going, you don't really want to step back. You want to stay with it. So that's the experience that I've been having, that you really want to stay with the story because you want to know what's happening next. That, I'm sure, is something you've had to give as an actor, how you carry that energy and have folks, your audience, stay with you. So there's a lot of experience that you're bringing to this book.
Well, I do a lot of things. I've been blessed to pursue different dreams, and they all come together for me. But what I find is that the acting influences the directing. The directing influences, of course, the producing. The producing influences the writing, and various versions of that. You know what I mean? So for me, it's really great because what I learn on set, what I learn on telling stories in certain acts on television, and just the sort of the rules, and then to take that and sort of integrate it into this next medium works very well, because many readers like yourself have said, I don't want to put the book down, and these short chapters, and it's not that, I mean, a lot of writers write like 5-page chapters, but it allows them, they go, you know what, let me sneak in 5 more. Let me sneak in 5 more. And so ironically, I just got finished reading a book. It wasn't hate reading, but I wasn't enjoying it. And I realized like the author had like these 25-page chapters. Ironically, you're more likely to read 25 pages of multiple chapters that are broken up, as opposed to 25. So it's the same page count, but psychologically, if you go, oh, I'm reading a 5-page chapter. Okay, cool. Ooh, I want more. Ooh, I want more. I want more. Easier, as opposed to, but I would, like a lot of readers do, I turn to a new chapter and then I go to where does this end? And I'll be like, oh my God. So, and so I write, like I said, I write in a way for people like myself who, have a lot of energy. They want, they want to see somebody sprinting the entire race. And that's how I write.
And so I want to say to folks who are hearing this and going, what does that mean? But remember, I started out telling you how well written it is. So if you have 5 pages, 10 pages, where you can't put it down, because what happens is you are transported into whatever the experience is. You see the characters, you see what's going on with the characters. And when that happens, the fast pace works. Because sometimes, Eriq, and I actually don't ever have authors on who I don't like their work, but I have read books that I don't like. Okay. And if it's not descriptive, if I don't see it, then I put the book down. If I can't see what it is. And so that is something I commend you on, your literary prowess, because it makes me happy to see that you truly are a writer.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Now that was that was always the goal. You know, I told my agent when I first started writing, I don't want to be a celebrity, you know, writer, whatever that means. That word is always a weird word for me, but I don't want to be, I want to be taken seriously. I want to be, so in order to be taken seriously, you have to respect the craft. Like, I don't come into different mediums. When I was an actor transitioning to director, I didn't come in with this arrogance of, oh, I've been on many movie sets. I came, it's almost like starting over. And so I came in, and I'd been in the business for years as an actor, but I started following around the DP. I started talking to editors. I started getting buddy with the director. Sometimes I did a film called Jacob's Ladder with the famous director Adrian Lyne. And he was, you know, who did Fatal Attraction, Flashdance. I mean, Adrian was, you know, back in the 80s, just killing it. And so he was doing a film. He let me come into the editing room with him. So when you have a certain type of humility, which is required to truly understand and respect each craft and not treat them all the same, the benefit. So every time I start over, so when I got into writing, respect the craft, read good writers, go to book conferences, like put in work. I mean, I've been writing novels for 10 years. So this isn't an overnight. Yeah, you know, couldn't get published, did the self publishing route. It's been a journey. So this is not some, oh, we're just going to show up and use this and get it. No, that's
helpful. That's helpful to know, Eriq, because as I read in your bio, there are 3 books that have come out kind of together, pretty close.
Right.
And so I'm glad you explained, no, this is 3 books now, but 10 years in the making, right?
So so to be clear, so Laws of Depravity is the first book. So technically it's 11 years, because Laws of Depravity came out in 2012. That was my first book.
Okay.
And then I, you know, got many rejections, multiple rejections from the same publisher. We'd go back, we try different things, we try different editors, you know, so then I said, well, I'm going to do it on my own. So I self-published it. It did well enough for a self-published book. Then I come out with the second book, same thing, go after everyone, rejection. 2 years later, so that came out in 2000.
What's the name of the second book again?
The second book is Laws of Wrath.
Right.
And so then I same things, and then I linked up with a marketing and publicity team. Raquel Henderson was in marketing, and she's someone that's been through the industry. And she started working with me and really believed in me and believed in the work. And she said, your books are too good to self-publish. I don't want you to self-publish. We're going to get you a publisher. And it took us working together a good 6 years. She had to talk me off the ledge a couple of times. And, it's just frustrating.
Humbling.
Talk about humbling. So
that's real.
So that came out. And so this third book, so then she got me a publisher. They said, we would like to reissue your previously self-published books leading up to the unpublished, which is Laws of Annihilation. So Laws of Annihilation is the newest, never been seen, never been published. So they use the first 2 books to help just kind of get the word out that, oh, he writes, he has a series, got good reviews, etc. But it's all leading to this one as being the original. So that's I just wanted to give you the
well, no, thank you. So then it's not what I said wasn't wrong. They did come out together, but 2 of them came out previously. Very smart marketing. So you got the right team to work with you, because the reality, as you know, as a writer, that's one thing. You have your head down, you're writing.
Right.
Promoting a book is a completely different headspace, everything that you have to do. You actually are writing these books, right? You're not working with the ghostwriter. It's Eriq La Salle writing.
That's been super important to me. Listen, writing any kind of book is difficult and challenging. So I give respect to anybody that sits down and says, I'm going to write a book. I don't care what it's about. That's a challenge. For me, it was important to do fiction. I like, you know, a lot of celebrities do memoirs and they do this, they do that. For me, I wanted to do creative writing, and I wanted to basically be the only voice. Every word, every sentence, every paragraph in my books come from one source, which is me. And I didn't want to have a ghost writer. I wanted to do it on my own. I wanted to tell my story. So that was really important for me because, again, and maybe this is where the ego does come in. I didn't want it to be like, and again, I take nothing away from people that use ghostwriters, but
Right.
I didn't want there to be any perception that, oh, well, we don't know how much is his and how much is the ghostwriter. It's all mine. Love it or hate it, it's all mine. And I claim it and I own it.
Hey guys, you are listening to Dream Leapers with Harriet Cole. We are talking to Eriq La Salle, the author of Laws of Annihilation. This is the third in a series. It is really quite an incredible book. And Eriq, there's something that just based upon the time that we're in right now.
Right.
And I want to get into this book, but first I want to talk about what we're living in right now, because in this book, it begins with a conflict between the Hasidic and Black communities, right?
Yes.
And right now, the entire world is looking with horror at what's happening in Israel. And no matter what your politics are about Israel and Palestine, what's happening with Hamas and the terrorization of people is just something that I think we all wish wasn't happening.
Right.
But you have your pen on the pulse of one of these really horrible moments of hate and fear that go on in our world. So first, would you share your thoughts on what's happening in our world before we go into the book?
Well, I think, unfortunately, I think that, again, everything is so politicized and everything is, politicized and polarized. If I don't agree with you, then I'm the devil. If you don't agree with me, you're the devil. We've gone there. We've gone there politically between the left and the right. We've gone there sometimes male, female. We've gone there on the issues of transgender. If I don't subscribe exactly the way you do, and so we're creating like this distance and these enemies. And so I think that what's going on in the world right now is really disappointing, because you would think with our history and with things that we would actually be growing more this way. But in fact, we're at this scary time in history where we're really doing this, and we're doing it on so many religious, so I wanted to bring in the whole religion thing, because like I'm very connected to my spirituality, but I never put my spirituality on other people. Like I can only say what works for me. I believe in God. I believe in, I follow. I don't consider myself religious. I consider myself spiritual, but I'm always very respectful. I can be cool with you if you don't believe in God. Right. What's more important to me is how you treat people, how you treat me, how you treat people. So I come from that school. We can be opposites. We can be different. But right now in the world, I think it's scary because they're saying we're all now saying you can't be different. You have to think the way I think, and if you don't, I'm going to demonize you. I'm going to erase you. I'm going to cancel you. And you're like, whoa! Like I thought we were in a democracy, and I thought we had the right to do that. And it requires a lot more compassion, because even when we are different, we're saying, okay, I don't believe what you believe, but again, if your way is not harming people, your way is not, then you have you do you. I can disagree with you, but you do you. And we're at a point in life right now and in history where that's not the norm, and that's not the accepted point of view.
And it's so frightening that even now, when all of this violence is happening, and we see because of social media, because of everybody having a cell phone, and then also the cameras that are there, we have seen grandmothers and children and elders and babies being snatched out of their homes. There's so many people who have lost their lives. why? You know, the innocents were supposed to be safe.
Right.
The laws of war are supposed to be that.
Right.
And we're seeing something very different. And as you say, yet people in our minds, I think some people are fighting so much, they're not able to just address what's happening right in front of our faces. Exactly. And what in the world can we do? And, you know, I remember I wrote a book called How to Be, which is etiquette plus. It's how to understand where you're coming from and where you're headed and to navigate your life with grace and integrity. That's essentially what it is. And it was during the Iraq War that it came out. And everybody was up in arms because of WMBs and all the stuff, all that. And I remember saying to people, I was on a book tour, and I remember saying, you know, what about the wars that we start? What about the wars in our relationships with our loved ones and our coworkers? And, you know, when we say things that aren't true and it sparks a spiral of negativity. Yeah. What about the wars that we start? Right. And if we were able to take care of, be responsible for ourselves, our thoughts, our words, our deeds, right, then how might the world be different? And it feels like this is another one of those times where we need to check ourselves, you know. Right.
We really do, because, and this is weird, and this is the first time I'm saying this in an interview, but it was a very weird dynamic, because when I was writing Laws of Annihilation, and I really want to be careful how I say this because I don't want this to be in any way misinterpreted. I knew that, unfortunately, the book would remain relevant, because I knew, and so, you know, I'm writing a book about anti-Semitism. I'm writing a book about anti-Semitic crimes. I'm writing a book about Jewish and Black relationships, relations, and how vulnerable those are, yes, and how fragile they are. And so, you know, we've seen such a rise in anti-Semitism. And listen, I'm on the side, and again, I don't want any of this politicized. I'm on the side of peace. Yeah. Period. I have compassion for everything that's happened in this last week. I have compassion for, you know, synagogues being burned down, or you know, abused and crimes that's committed there. I have compassion for the same thing with mosques. I have to say, so if you this is the problem. You can't be half human. You can't say my humanity only exists for this half. My humanity, I work for my humanity to exist for all, and more of a collective thing. So, so it was really scary and weird and sad, because I knew by the time that this book was released that the chances, if you just look statistically, what's been happening in this country, and I'm not, this wasn't on an international scale, but it was on
right, just even looking here.
But even looking here, which is a microcosm of the world. In writing this book, it was scary because, and I told my agent, I said, by the time the book is released, there'll probably be another big event. No imagination for what this thing was, and like you said, compassion to all sides in the situation. Because, like you said, here's the difference: soldier to soldier, that's one thing,
right?
And you talk about the laws of war, the rules of war, that's one thing. You're talking innocence on either side. That's just that. To me, but that's
off limits. It's supposed to be off limits.
Off limits, and so yeah. So it was scary. You know, you write this, and you certainly don't wish anything bad to happen to make your book feel more relevant. But when you're writing it, you're writing about something that's very relevant, and if you do it in an accurate, detailed way, that relevance will, in general, survive and live, because we have a long way to go to start taking that hate down. So that's been a weird dynamic with writing this book, and kind of holding your breath. Like, it's been a minute since there's been a big, anti-Semitic incident,
And
uh,
then here it is.
and boom, and then so you figure it'll come again, just this cycle. It's been a while since we've had incidents with blacks, and so it's a cycle, and so every 2 months or something. So it's just you really just using the statistics and saying we're due. And I hate to say this, we're due for some really bad stuff happening, and that's how I proceeded with this book.
And so that's why, as I've been reading your book, I started and it was, I mean, status quo. I don't even know what that means. It just was. There weren't international headlines about anti-Semitism, even though I'm sure there were things happening. There's so many things when you dig, just pull just a Band-Aid off. You don't mean to have to go that deep, but one of the things that has been true, and so now we're let me just preface this by saying we're getting into territory that I have absolutely never talked about on a broadcast before, but feels like safe space, and hopefully it'll help the folks who are tuned in. Talking about Jewish culture was off limits. Like, Black folks, don't do it. Other folks don't do it. Folks have gotten in a lot of trouble for saying anything at all about Jewish people. The same has not been true for Black people. People can say anything about us and do anything to us, and it seems to not matter, which is horrific. But your book is going in head on, showing what happens. Like, even though, as you say, your goal is peace, which I believe you, and what you're showing in your book is kind of what happens when it's not everybody's goal. When people are grappling with stereotypes, when they're grappling with challenges within their families and communities, when they're grappling with lack. Whenever there's lack, then really bad things happen. And you are addressing stuff that is kind of off limits. We're not really supposed to be talking about this, Eriq. Am I wrong? Am I wrong in saying that?
No, trust me. Listen, I'm at a point as an artist, and I mentor a lot of directors, being an executive producer and being a director. So when I hire directors to come, do shows, and I mentor them and I tell them, if you're not showing up to set a little nervous, then you're not doing it right. Because what that means is you're pushing yourself outside your limits. And so that's where it gets scary. That's where it makes you nervous. But that's also the place of growth and accomplishment and amazement. So, not being a hypocrite, I was nervous writing this book.
I bet.
You're nervous to, you got to get it right now. But this is how you mitigate some of that anxiety. You make sure the research.
Yes, it's clear.
You double down on the research. I doubled down. This book had to be vetted in so many different ways. I had technical advisors. I met with rabbis. I met with, so I got their approval. I even got a Hasidic rabbi to read it. And he said, I can't publicly, endorse this, and not so much endorse it. I can't publicly promote it, I should say. He goes, but you got some good things. You know why? It's simple in this regard. If you notice, everyone is represented in good and bad. So we have
real people.
So we have good African Americans, bad African Americans. We have prejudiced African Americans in this. We have good Jewish. We have prejudiced and discriminatory things in here. So when you're presenting each group in all of their beauty and ugliness, you're being unbiased. So I'm not slamming one culture. I'm not compromising one culture. I'm simply saying, look how vulnerable we are. Even though we have somewhat of a shared history as far as oppression, as far as like we're two of the most oppressed groups in the world. And so even though we have that, there's still this division between us. So my job is to, as an artist and as a writer, is to show three-dimensional this side, three-dimensional this side. So I'm not, and so that's the great thing. And I think like there are two great characters in here that end up being, you know, linked together, that really you see both of their unapologetic, you see their racism, you see them, you see this African American's hatred of Jewish, you see this Jewish person's hatred of African Americans. So I'm not pointing finger, I'm pointing.
It's equal opportunity, kind of showing the whole spectrum. Let me remind folks, this is Dream Leapers with Harriet Cole. We are talking to author Eriq La Salle about his new book, Laws of Annihilation. The title, Annihilation, Laws of Annihilation. What does it mean, Eriq?
Well, I think it's a sort of a double meaning. If you just think about destruction, and we think about obliterating something, we obviously it harkens back to the Holocaust and what was the goal of the Germans, of Nazi Germany. And so, but annihilation also here, we're all at risk, all genders, all races, all religions, we're all at risk of sort of annihilating ourselves from within. We think of annihilation, and even if we look at slavery and we look at genocide of Native Americans, it's an outside force that comes in for genocide. Annihilation can be thought of, you know, to obliterate and to, you know, get rid of and to just wipe something out. But this book deals with the threat of self-annihilation. It deals with the threat of inner annihilation for all of us, not just one group, but understanding if we don't start finding some common ground and some mutual respect for life and for culture and for all of these things, we're all at risk of being annihilated. And so that's the sort of double entendre of the title.
So as you all are listening to Eriq, you can tell he wrote this book. Your thoughts are uniquely yours, and the way that you just are describing helps us to see, you know, how you're thinking, how you're approaching these characters. And by the way, because it's deep, it's easy to read this book. I don't want anybody to listen to us and go, oh my God, it's too heavy. It's not. It's not. It's very thoughtful. You know, you definitely, as you are reading, you question your values, you question your ability to empathize with others, you question your beliefs about these two groups of people, but also yourself. Exactly. You know, like how do I fit in, which is kind of what you're saying. I don't want to tell too much of what goes on in the book, but as you were planning this, what is the intention behind the book? What do you want people, when they get to page 412, I think it is, and they're done, what do you want people to walk out into to do? Is there a call to action? Is there something that you want to happen?
Well, I think it's twofold. I think first and foremost, as an author, if you say the average time to read a book is, I don't know, 2 to 3 weeks in average. I mean, a lot of us read quicker and read, but let's just say the average time. So for 2 to 3 weeks of your life, I'm asking you to devote that to something I've created. Well, I have to make that entertaining. I have to make that interesting. I have to make it for me, I choose to make it self-reflective, self-interrogation. Where do I fall in the spectrum of spirituality? Where do I fall into the spectrum of humanity? Where do I fall into the spectrum of just kindness and patience and tolerance and acceptance and all of these things? So for me, if I'm asking you to give me this time, I feel it's my duty as an artist to give you stuff to think about. Like when we were kids, we were growing up, And I hope this doesn't sound in any way negative, but we always thought Chinese food was kind of good for a while, but it didn't quite stick to your ribs. You know what I mean? Soul food was just the opposite. Soul food would have us, knocked out on the couch, right? Because
with the itis.
the itis would kick in. But Chinese food, for some reason, was always thought of as like, it was good for an hour. Now I'm hungry again, right? Well, many people write like that. I want the more soul food, but the opposite of itis. I want the awakening. I want people to read and be like, wow, I never thought about that, or this is deep. And so in order to do that, your art should cost you. As an artist, your art should cost you. It should cost you the comfort zone. It should cost you in acting, we always say acting is having a private moment publicly. And so as an artist, I believe the same thing. I want to deal, like, there's some lines on both sides. We in the Black community and in all communities, we hear things that our relatives say. There were stupid things we used to say about another group of people, about another race of people, about another group of people that worship differently. We come home and we hear that stuff. We say that stuff. And so in order for us to really be held accountable for it, we have to own up to it. We have to own up to, I used to have that point of view. I used to have that. So I present these points of views, and I want the audience, the readers, to walk away saying, I identify, even in private, even if I will never say it to anyone else, I identify with that type of prejudice towards another group that's different from me. I identify with a touch of misogyny here. I identify with these political issues. I identify, and I'll go even further, because I also make the quote unquote bad guys, the white supremacists, have some points that you can't truly dismiss either. You can't just go, oh, these are some cartoon character bad guys. They say some things that you go, look, I don't agree with your execution of things. I don't agree with the extremism that you're willing to go to. But statistically, some of the facts that you're putting down, I have to at least think about that. So I don't want you to be able to dismiss the bad guys, because that makes it easy. I think it's more difficult when words of racism are coming from a loved one, when words of sexism are coming from someone that you know, and sometimes we decide to be quiet about it because that's our mother, that's our father, that's our aunt, that's our uncle, that's our brother, I don't feel like, so you just get quiet and people say some stupid shit. Excuse me, people say some stupid stuff, and you just want to. My books, when you ask what do I want from the readers, I want us all to be accountable for who we are, and so I want it to stick with you. So one of the greatest compliments I receive consistently on my writing is that the characters stick with you. Like, people think about them. So I don't ask you to read something, give me 2 or 3 weeks of your life, and you read it, and then you're on to, and I've read books where literally like a week later, I was like,
what did I read?
What did I read? So I want this to be like, wow, I remember this character from Eriq La Salle's book, and it still haunts me. It still inspires me. It still, gives me some argument. That's the big thing.
And I feel confident that is going to happen. I want to talk about the process, because a lot of people who tune into Dream Leapers want to write. Want to write books. That is probably the number one dream for people, is to write a book. And I mean, I remember I wanted to write a book since I was 12, and I wrote my first book when I was 32, 20 years later. And it took that amount of time to live, to have experiences, to even have anything to say that would fill a book. And you've just described that you do a ton of research. One of the things that you just talked about that I'd like you to go in a little deeper on is the research about personalities, these different people who represent different groups. And you did enough research to be able to inhabit them, to present them as who you believe they are in their fullness. How did you feel as you were inhabiting these different characters, which I imagine is also what happens when you inhabit them as an actor, when you become them as they are.
Bingo. Yeah, you just answered the question. We are in acting, one of the first things you're taught, don't judge your character. And the year before NYPD Blue came out, and Dennis Franz played a character by the name of Sipowicz, who was racist, drunk, a cop. And this is one of our heroes.
Right.
And I thought it was such a bold performance because he was never, as the actor, he never apologized. He never shied away. When he said something racist or politically incorrect, he never shriveled, he never shrunk, he never whispered it. That's who he was. And so the next year, ER comes along. I audition, I get the role, and I refuse to ever apologize for Dr. Benton's behavior. Love him, hate him, he was who he was. And so because see, this society in the world, we want to beat the courage out of artists. We want it to be, it's got to be palatable. It's got to make me feel good. Well, people in real life don't always make you feel good. You don't always like people, but sometimes you need them. So as long as I can be true to that, as long as I can stay true to that, then I'm doing things, I'm presenting characters in a way. Being an actor, I don't judge my characters. As a matter of fact, just the opposite. Being an actor, there's still that part of my imagination. I'm playing out all my characters. When I'm writing, I'm loving. And so if I'm being bad or evil or whatever, I'm like, ooh, wow, this is exciting.
That for a minute.
for a minute, just as a character, because I am presenting a point of view, even if it's so opposite of mine, but I want to explore it and justify it. Because so when you think about like debate teams, back in the day, they would switch opinions. So
that's right.
So you might say you might be pro-life. This person might be saying I think abortion. Okay, fine. Argue that. Now switch and try to and still try to win. And so that's how I write. If I'm writing a racist white person in this book that wants the destruction of Blacks and Jews, I got to get into that mindset to make that character feel real and not me commenting on the character, but me inhabiting the character. So that's where it definitely.
How do you protect yourself, Eriq? Because there are stories, if we go back to actors, Heath Ledger being one of them, there are others who arguably got lost in their characters and lost their lives. Because you can inhabit and become and, spiral out. How do you take care of yourself as you are inhabiting the characters, writing them, allowing them to become themselves on the page? How does Eriq take care of Eriq so that you remain whole?
Well, it's separation of, like, I've never been this method actor. I know I'm acting. I'm honored to be an actor. I want to go as deep as I can, but I also know, like, I'm not gonna smack, like some actors have been known to smack other actors because they felt. I'm like, no, this is you have to respect people. So that's never been a threat to me. I know how to separate, and I know how to immerse myself enough in a character to make it believable as an actor or as a writer. And so you go there, and like I said, you explore opinions that most people aren't all bad. Most people aren't all good. So if you take that basic principle, well, even if my bad guy is not all bad, let me focus on some of the things that he's not bad at. You know what I mean? Let me focus on some of the things that I might under certain circumstances, I might like this guy. I once knew a cop who told me, a white cop, who told me he's no longer a cop. He says, "You would not have liked me as a cop." And I absolutely adore him right now as a man. He's so, but he volunteered this. He said, "You would not have liked me." He's talking to me as a black man. "You would not have liked me." But now I don't know that guy. The guy that I know is compassionate and loves. I see how he interacts with people of color, with women, and I just see a heart, and I go, and that's all I know. So you have to explore. I want to explore both sides of those if I'm writing him as a character.
That's something. Okay, I have to ask you this. This is on behalf of my producer, Fallon. We're totally turning the page.
Okay.
Whose favorite movie is Coming to America? So we cannot leave this conversation without something about Coming to America, because your character is so iconic. And that's a movie that, it's an iconic movie. It keeps coming back. People are continuing to watch it. You had so much fun. We've just been talking about some heavy stuff. That was fun.
Right.
That was fun. We're never going to forget that Jerry curl. That's so fun. Just take us into that experience of being in that film.
Well, look, it was my first big project. And I mean, a lot of wonderful memories. It was one of the first and few jobs that I was hired on the spot. The director, John Landis, literally told me in the audition, because normally like there's a chain where you have to get the producer and the studio to, like, the director may like you, but then, and that's how you lose a lot of roles, right? So this guy told me he had enough power at that point to make that decision in the room without checking with anyone. Wow. So that's how I started that thing of just disbelief. And
that felt good, didn't it?
That felt amazing. And I will tell you this, as a director, any opportunity that I get to do that to an actor, I do it. I pay it forward, because that is such an artist. I mean, you think about when we pursue our dreams, how much rejection. Like, I was rejected for 10 years. So you think about the rejection that you face as a woman, as a Black woman, as doing different things. Like you say, the reason you have so many iterations of yourself is because you're constantly trying different things. But there's rejection at every single point. And so to be able to empower some, so that's what he did. So I try to do that. And it was just you don't know ever if a film is going to be a hit or a TV show is going to be a hit. You just show up and you do the work. There was this thing where everything was just clicking on that set. The behind the scenes was everything. It just felt good. You can't predict that it's going to be a hit. You can't predict that it's going to become iconic. But everything was just one of those fun shoots, and to sit back and watch, a master at the top of his game. He was at the top of his game there, to see them going into different characters. So sometimes you come to set just as an audience member who has a front row seat. So everyone's like, you're sitting there and you're watching the process, you're watching the improvisation, you're watching the scripted, you're watching these things. And, Eddie was at the top of his game there. So I felt honored and blessed. And like I said, it was my first big thing. And it was a hell of a ride. And
because you had the great good fortune to have that as your first film, the way you entered with experts at the top of their game in all these different positions, obviously you're learning a lot. But what did that do for you internally in terms of believing, I can do this, that I can, this thing that my heart tells me that I want to do, I can make it my career?
Well, when you get validation from the directors, and from, if you're doing a scene with someone who's at the top of their game, like Eddie, and they give you that nod, or just a conversation when you're trying to, when people are feeling you and when they're not feeling you. And so when you're breaking down the scene and you're working in a scene, and he said, "Hey, why don't you try that?" And you're engaged, and you realize you have the engagement of someone that you respect and someone that knows this, and that engagement is their way of giving you respect. They're not dismissing you. They're not, taking things from you. They're not minimizing you. They're empowering and uplifting you. That's what makes you go, "Ooh, I got this." And I'm playing with a master. And the same thing with, now with writing. It's just like when I get, great blurbs from like James Patterson and stuff like that, it makes you go,
And Dick Wolf.
and, "Well, yeah, so it's, yeah,
It's
it
all
works."
good. Eriq La Salle, thank you so much. This is a wonderful read. Laws of Annihilation, perfect timing. Thank you for putting so much of your soul and your creativity in each and every word. It really is worth reading, and can't wait to read the next one. And once this strike is over, can't wait to see what you're doing next. We'll
Yes.
have you back to talk about it when you can.
Yes, yes. Well, we're going back. I was actually doing a new show for Amazon for Dick Wolf's first streaming show.
Oh,
So I'm directing and exec producing. So the good news is, soon as the book comes out the following week, I go back to work to do to finish that. So it's called On Call. It's coming out. It's awesome. It's awesome.
oh, see, we got some scoop, y'all. On call.
Yeah, I can promote that now. So
Oh, good.
that'll be coming out. And like I said, it'll be on Amazon. And it's Dick Wolf's first time into streaming, and the fact that he entrusted me to direct the pilot and be the executive producer, I'm just really humbled and honored by it. And the timing is great. Like one week I'm doing all this stuff for the book, and then the next week I'm back, dealing with these other duties, and it feels great to just be living my dreams like that.
Well, wonderful. Thank you for spending this time with us, and good luck with everything.
Oh, such a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. It was a great interview. Like you said, this was one of the best interviews. So thank you so much, Aaron.
Thank you. And thank you to all of you for tuning in. I told you this was going to be a good one. Go get this book, Laws of Annihilation by Eriq La Salle. You will enjoy it. It's a page turner. Until next time, have a great day and make it count.